Thanks for joining the Admin Show. And today we are going to talk about, the flying objects during Vedic tradition and how currently the airplanes fly. So let's begin. At present, there is no clear understanding of how airplanes fly. The Scientific American article, "No one can explain why planes stay in air," details the problems associated with flight. In this article, we'll talk about an alternative theory of flight rooted in the Vedic description of the three modes of material nature called guna of Prakriti, and such as the changing weight of a person during the course of a day, and then talk about why weight is not independent property of the object. It is one of the several mutually entangled properties such that changing one property changes many others. The brief summary of this solution is that increasing the speed of some shapes reduces their weight and they fly, but that doesn't happen for all shapes. Contrary to modern scientific principles, speed, shape, and weight are not independent properties. Each property is entangled with others. Properties to varying extents such that a change to one property changes other property to varying extents. This is called bhed bheda, or that two things are distinct but inseparable. Inseparability means that they cannot be changed independently. Speed, shape, and weight are distinct properties that cannot be changed independently. By changing the shape of the airplane, we can shorten or elongate the runway it needs to take off. The theory underlying Bernoulli's principle, the problem, as the article points out, is not the mathematical equation called the Bernoulli's principle, as the article says. There is little, if any, serious disagreement as to what the appropriate equation or the solutions are. The objective of technical mathematical theory is to make accurate prediction and to project results that are useful to aeronautical engineers engaged in complex business of designing aircraft. But by themselves, equations are not explanations and neither are the solutions. The author makes an distinction between prediction and explanation. An equation makes a prediction and it can be verified, but there is deeper question why this equation and not another. We solve the problem by presenting a causal mechanism. For instance, heavy objects fall down towards the ground. The speed and acceleration of that fall can be measured and predicted using an equation. But the success of that prediction doesn't tell us why heavy objects fall towards the ground. For that, Newton postulated a gravitation theory in which the Earth attracts object, which is responsible for our experience of heaviness, and gravitation theory is the explanation of falling objects. For the flight of an airplane, there is an equation called Bernoulli's principle. It says when the speed of a fluid increases, the pressure exerted by the fluid decreases. Textbook and aerodynamics explain flight by a wing which is more convex to the top than at the bottom. The textbook says that the air atop the wings takes the same time to traverse the most convex surface as compared to their below the wing, which is less convex. An airlift is created, it is claimed, due to the different velocities above and below the wing. This is like saying that two friends, identical in all respects, run slower and faster to arrive at the destination at the time while passing through shorter and longer routes. The problem of Bernoulli's principle. There are three problems with this explanation. First, as the author of the above article notes, airplanes can fly upside down when, according to the textbook's explanation, an upside down plane should fall to the ground because the force that was lifting it earlier should now push it downward. Second, airplanes whose wings don't have different convexity on the top and bottom surface still fly when they should never fly according to the above explanation. Third, for air to flow faster on the convex surface, air must know that is flowing over more convex surface, just as the air flowing slower on the less convex surface must know that is flowing over less convex surface. Since the air is not conscious, hence it cannot know the convexity of the surface. The convexity of the surface exerts no forces or pressure on the air. Without knowing the convexity, air cannot change its speed. Therefore, the postulated variable speed of the air above and below the wing has no causal explanation. Due to this problem, convexity is not necessary because wings with same convexity on both sides still fly. Convexity is not sufficient because planes with convex wings fly can upside down just as well as they are flying upright when inversion of the wing should force the plane to fall to the ground. The explanation of lift based on wing convexity is not rational because it requires air to know if it is flowing over a more or less convex surface. Fluid mechanics in 1995, everyone had problems. Everyone else attending the same course was solving Bernoulli's equation, but it needed some attention. And throughout, eventually there's a research of answer to those questions. It is realized that indoctrination is a default measure of modern science. There are equations that work, but nobody knows why. The explanations are neither necessary nor sufficient nor rational. Examples of flight in Vedic tradition. I hope problem is sufficiently clear to everyone so that I can move on the more interesting topic. The topic is what heaviness really is and how things become light. Even before I get into that topic, it is worth noting that there are two mystic powers called Garima and Lagima in yogic tradition that talk about increasing one's heaviness called Garima and increasing one lightness called Laghima. The best known example of these mystic power is Hanuman, the great devotee of Lord Ramchandra. The Mahabharata describing how Bhima found Hanuman lying in a forest and Bhima asked him to move because it was considered disrespectful to walk over a person. Hanuman then said, I am too old and not able to move. Why don't you move me? Bhima then tried to move Hanuman's tail, but he could not because it had become too heavy. This is Garima. Likewise, Hanuman flew to Ravana's Lanka from a place called Rameshwaram in South India. There he met Mother Sita, exchanged messages, burnt Lanka, and flew back to Rameshwaram, that is Laghima. One of Prabhupada's disciples tells a story of how Prabhupada would lock himself in his room while translating books. The door had a latch with a hole for inserting a key from outside the room. The disciple could occasionally hear some sounds. One day, out of curiosity, the disciple peeked into a hole in the door just to check what was going inside. He saw Prabhupada floating in the air. He mentioned this is Prabhupada's later and he responded, I was checking how Krishna's energy are working, but you should not speak about it to anyone. Later, on some purpose, Prabhupada would write, the planets are floating on the sky by Krishna's energy. Prabhupada had all the mystic powers of yogis, but he would hide them. He called the practice of yoga in the West to get such mystic powers of gymnastic and nose pressing. Instead, he would always talk about Krishna, sometimes calling him the greatest mystic yogi because he had experienced extraordinary powers and he knew that Krishna had the same powers. One time he talked about resurrection of Jesus. A yogi can live with his bones. Crucifixion was therefore not death. Jesus was alive when he was crucified. The consciousness was withdrawn into bones where the pain was not experienced. When the body was taken off the cross, the consciousness reverted to the rest of the body. and Jesus walked off the place where he had been buried previously. Advanced yogi knew Prabhupada's mystic power. One time, one of the Prabhupada's disciples went to Mahesh Yogi to check if Mahesh Yogi would contradict Prabhupada. Mahesh Yogi sent the disciple back to Prabhupada, telling him that Prabhupada was great yogi. While he was teaching yoga, one to prepare others to go to Prabhupada. By doing anti gravity terrestrial tests, such as by floating in the air, Prabhupada conferred was gravity what gravity really was, and he applied that understanding to celestial motion. Hence, he would have agreed that celestial and terrestrial mechanics are the same thing. But he would also reject Newton's idea of gravity. A yogi can increase his heaviness due to garima and decrease the heaviness due to laghima. The Samkhya yoga theory of weight. Properties of heaviness and lightness are attributed to touch in Sankhya. Properties like heat and cold, hardness and softness are also attributed to Srimad Bhagavatam 3.26.36 says, softness and hardness and cold and heat are the distinguished attributes of touch, which is characterized as a subtle form of air. Likewise, there are properties of roughness and smoothness attributed to touch. The element responsible for the sensation of touch is also called Vayu, translated as air, but it is prior to fire responsible for the sensation of vision. The things we perceive can be heavy or light, hot or cold, hard or soft, and rough or smooth, but they are exclusively air only when we cannot see them. If perceived things are visible in addition or being heavy or light, hot or cold, hard or soft, and rough or smooth, then the visible properties like shape, size, and color are attributed to fire, while heaviness, heat, hardness, and roughness are attributed to air. Thus, a hard thing may not be visible. Something that generates friction may not be visible. Everything that feels hot may be visible. Thus, heaviness, or what Newton calls gravity, is due to air that cannot be seen and yet it exerts a force. If perceived things is visible, as in case of celestial bodies like sun and moon, then the visible component is due to fire and heaviness is due to air. An enormous force exists in the universe as air, and yet it cannot be seen. This is presently called the dark energy and dark matter. It exerts a force and feels hot and yet cannot be seen. The modern concept of black hole, which exerts immense force and is yet not visible, can be attributed to air, but a black hole can be very hot and yet not be visible because heat and light are properties of different senses. In Newtonian mechanics, a particle has mass but no heat. The property of heat has been treated in classical physics as the property of collections of particles rather than individual particles, like unlike in Sankhya, where heat is the property of touch along with heaviness. Classical physics postulated the immutability of particles based on the hardness of things, when hardness just means that it is harder to break things into smaller parts and not that they are immutable. Newton assumes that we can see objects with heaviness, leading to the present conundrums of dark energy and dark matters, which are dark because they cannot be seen and yet exert immense forces. Then quantum mechanics coolest heat and light into photons, when heat is about the sense of touch and light is about the sense of sight. Thus, modern science has created immense confusion, equating hardness to immutability, separate heat from heaviness, merging heat and light, and assuming the heaviness must pertain to visible objects. Elementary principles of sense perception have violated in the modern physics from outset, which subsequently results in numerous problems, perplexities, and contradiction. The Sankhya Yoga theory of modes. The distinction between heaviness, lightness, or between cold are the results of the addition of modern modes of nature called sattva, rajas, and tamas. To the sense of touch, tamas is heavy and hot. Rajas is slightly light and cool, whereas sattva is the lightest and coolest. Modern cosmology transforms the property of heat and heaviness into the property of distance. For instance, modern cosmology says that the star is sending us less heat and exert less gravitation force on us is far from us, while stars sending us more heat and exerting greater gravitational force on us is near us. Therefore, thereby, things in sattva have a greater distance from us, while those in the tamas are closer to us. Things in sattva are pushed away and things in tamas are pulled closer. But if our mental attitude changes and we imbibe sattva, then we will invert these measurements to say that things in sattva are closer to us while things in tamas farther from us. The distance to some things is changed depending on whether we are sattva, rajas, and tamas. If we talk about real distance to things, then we have to talk about how far sattva, rajas, and tamas are from each other, not how far we find them to be based on our state in sattva, rajas, and tamas. The distance measurement requires a person to transcend the three modes. Thus, distance objectivity is the result of transcending the modes, and distance subjectivity is the result of being in one of those modes. Distance measured in modern science are the results of tamasic minds. They are not reality, they are results of interpreting heat and heaviness as proximity versus interpreting coolness and lightness as greater distance. When sattva, rajas, and tamas are combined, there is always a dominant subordinate structure. The three modes are always present, but we can flip the order of prominence to create new properties. Thus, we don't have to change the constitution of anything to make it heavier or lighter, hotter or colder. We can also flip the hierarchy of modes by reorganizing the modes into new structure through that flipping of the hierarchy within modes. Cold can become hot and heavy and can become light or vice versa. For example, there is technique by which we can make our body hot on winter day and different technique by which we can make our body cold in summer. We don't need to add or remove heat externally. We can also flip the order of modes and change one property into another, including its very opposite. Thereby, there is no objective weight of an object. We can change the order of modes and the weight will change. It can become lighter or heavier. This problem is seen in all scientific experiments where repetition of the experiment reveals a slightly different value of property. There are no constant of nature. A kilogram is not the same kilogram every day. It is changing every moment, but ever so slightly that most of us cannot notice the difference. If we extremely sensitive scale of measurement, then we will get a different results every time we do a measurement. But modern science disregards this change as instrumental errors on environmental variation. The Sankhya yoga explanation of light. Yogis who pursue mystic powers acquire the ability to flip the modes of modes such that hot can become cold and cold can become hot or heavy can become light and when lightness becomes heaviness, this is called garima. When heaviness becomes lightness, then it is called laghima. This is because the body doesn't have a fixed weight. Hanuman can make his tail, so can make his body so light that he can fly in the air just as a piece of cotton. Weight watchers know that body weight changes over the course of a day by about a kilogram. Always the weight measured in the morning is less than the weight measured night because sattva is prominent in morning and tamas is prominent in night. The prominence of sattva is the morning makes our body light and prominence of tamas in the night makes our body heavy. Modes of nature are constant flipped by the effect of time due to which our weight changes with time. In Vedic tradition, those who wanted to go to heavenly planet would want to die during Uttarayana or the upward motion of the sun, while those who wanted to go to demonic planets would want to die during Dakshyana or the downward motion of the sun. The upward motion increases sattva and the downward motion increases tamas. The upward motion is spring and the downward motion is autumn. We feel lightness when spring arrives and heaviness when autumn arrives. Thus, the effect of mode is used to explain a variety of things: changing weight, changing seasons, changing personality, mystic powers such as Garima and Lagima. Most of us cannot change the modes willingly. We rely on the modes being changed as the effect of time. Therefore, as by time passes, we automatically get hungry, tired, sleepy, restless, active, aroused, restful, and awake. Those who want to acquire the power to control the modes are advised to control hunger, tiredness, activity, sleep, sexuality, wakefulness, restfulness, and activity. Once a yogi has gained mastery over his bodily changes, he cannot change the modes voluntarily. Then he gets all mystic powers such as Garima and Lagima. He can make his body so heavy that if he punches someone, it feels like a collision with a speeding car. He can make his body so light that if he collides with someone, then the other person will find that it to be just like touch of the feather. The effect of time on the properties of things is not uniform for all things. It varies based on the modes in that thing. For example, in the morning time makes a kilogram lighter, but the human body has become even lighter, due to which the body becomes lighter relative to the kilogram. If time effects was uniform on everything, then kilogram will always detect the same weight. Likewise, and at night time makes the kilogram heavier, but the human body has become even heavier, due to which body becomes heavier relative to the kilogram. There is fundamental difference between whatever we call a living thing and a dead thing. Nothing is factually dead, but the variation of in the weight of the human body is large. Which varies more is called living, and what varies less is called dead. Factually, even the deadest things, example, a kilogram is changing its property with the passing of time. A false concept of objectivity in science, under which there are fixed property of things, has created the illusion of dead things. Also, they are not truly, they are too changing like living things, although not as much as living things. Thus, we can never have universal laws of nature based on measurements and constants, because everything is changing relative to each other due to effect of time. The laws that work today may not work a few centuries from now. The laws that work on on one planet may not work on another planet. The laws that work on one things may not work for another thing. The laws that work on combination of things may not work on another combination. Any universal law is false. It is upheld as truth only due to disregard for minor changes with time, place, situation, and object variation. Dominant, subordinate, and balancing. We now have fundamental principles which, to understand how something become heavier or lighter, change the dominant, subordinate structures of modes, and you can change the weight. But before we apply this to airplane flights, we have to discuss the role of prana in making these changes. Once we understand that, then we can apply the process how the airplanes flies in the air. The process of prana is called the Samkhya through a triad called Manas, Prana, and Vak. In this case, there is thought in mind which is converted into speech by application of prana. This type of prana is called udana or expansion. Speech is a part of the mind, but it lies unmanifest there. By the application of udana, the thought expands into speech. The converse of this process is called prana. When the sound is heard and it becomes a thought in the mind, if many such things have been heard in the past and the mind goes from one thought to another successively, it is called Vyana. If, as the result of hearing something, we realize that as previously entered thought was false, then we reject that through our mind and is called apana or expiation. Finally, if many things have been heard and assimilated in the mind, then the process of reconciliation reconciling them into coherent thought is called samana or digestion. Finally, as the digested, conciled, and coherent thought is spoken, it is again urana. Prana therefore takes five forms called prana, apana, urana, vyana, and samana, which is collectively used to educate the mind, cleanse the dirt in mind, move the mind from one thought to another, reconcile the previously received ideas, and speak the perfectly received ideas for others. Generally, those who haven't undergone such education are advised to keep quiet except for asking genuine questions. This means use the urana only for questions, and after prana, apana, vyana, and samana have been used properly, then use urana in the service of the Lord, not for satisfying the ego. This advice is given so that other four forms of prana gain prominence to accelerate learning. If a person reads many books and accumulates many ideas, then he is given promise to prana. But is that process is apana and samana have been weakened? He cannot digest all those ideas and he cannot excrete useless ideas. His mind can only wander from one idea to another due to vyana, and he will keep talking due to urana. But his mind is already so confused that ingesting more ideas by prana will further confuse the mind because he has lost the ability to digest and excrete. Thereby, in the description of prana, we always talk about the balance, about the five prana. This means that as you acquire new ideas, try to reconcile them coherent pictures. Don't keep those ideas fragmented, because if you do, then it will be very hard to digest them later on. Your mind will get confused and distracted, and you will not be able to reject the false ideas, nor will you be able to resolve the contradictions. Digestion and excretions are very important for progressive consumption. If we cannot digest and excrete, we should stop the consumption and digest the excrete. The Sankhya theory of ordinary motion. The Vyana from prana is commonly seen in what we call motion. For example, if we rotate a cube, then we will see its many faces one by one. The vision of faces one after another is called the mind moving from one thought to another. The rotation of the cube is called Vyana. Similarly, if you see a person walk by in front of our eyes, we will first see these faces, then their side profile, and then their back. We cannot see all these things simultaneously, but we can ingest these images one by one through prana and digest them into coherent pictures through samana. During the process of digestion, some things such as bag a person is holding in their hand would be excreted. Finally, as a result of Vyana, prana, samana, and apana thought will manifest from the mind. This is movement due to urana. Every moving thing is moving within a whole. The earth is one such whole, but there are many smaller wholes such as country, city, or house. Movement within this whole is called is like food moving in the body. In at some place, the food is ingested. At another place, it is digested. At another place, it is moved to a new place. At another place, it is excreted, and finally, at yet another place, the food is used for some expression and expansion. Hence, all five forms of prana are not acting simultaneously. Each of the five prana acts to a greater or lesser extent in a different part of the body. If we chew on an orange and expand and happen to bite on a bitter orange seed, then we may spit it too. While producing the sound is urana, while the bitter orange being spat out is apana. The bitter seed can be spat out. The result of five prana is that hierarchically inverted tree is constructed in which the hole in the root and the various twig becomes dominant. Meanwhile, the twig may also be moving from one branch to another. Hence, we describe this motion as change motion, meaning it has moved unchanged. However, change means that it has also been altered in the process of moving. How the five process acts in an airplane. For the aircraft, the ingestion of the fuel is the prana, the burning of the fuel is samana, and the excretion of fuel is apana. These three things happen even when we burn paper or clothes, so that These are not unique to the aircraft. The aircraft design plays a role specifically in how two other changes, upward lift and forward motion, are those generated. These are Vyana, the noise created by the engine is Urana. We can contrast these two processes in an airplane to that in a car. The car also burns fuels and moves forward. The car engine also produces noise. However, the car doesn't lift from the road. Thus, the uniqueness of the aircraft is that an addition type of Vienna called lift it produces. The lift, as we discussed, is the result of reduction in the heaviness of the aircraft due to mode changes. The movement of human body is also due to Vienna, which also previously generated and stored due to process of cooking, eating, digesting, circulating, and excreting. In modern biology, we say that energy has been stored in the body due to which we can move the body. That energy is all five kind of prana. Thus, five kinds of prana are used to extract prana from food, store in the body, and then use it for action. Modern science calls the energy, but in Samkhya we divide into five components. Thus, when the human body moves, it is due to previously extracted and stored prana, but when an aircraft moves, it is extracting the prana using prana from the fuel in the engine. It will be very hard to generate and store enough energy to fly an aircraft using a battery, but the human body stores it because the energy becomes an unmanifest in the body, and by will, the unmanifest energy is manifest. The generation of lift in an airplane. So the question is, what is happening in the aircraft that is reducing the heaviness while the same thing is not happening in the car? The answer, as you can guess, that's something to do with the wings of the aircraft. But as we explained earlier, the lift cannot be explained by Bernoulli's principle because the lift happens even with flat wings. Even if the plane flies inverted, and even if we suppose that the air does not know whether the wing is flat or curved, whether the plane is upright or inverted. To understand all this, we have to go back to Manas, Prana, and Vak principle, in which the thought is produced from the mind due to prana. The entire body is just like the mind. The weight of the body is called the thought produced by the mind, and the cause of that production is one more of the five types of prana. Shankhya philosophy describes how both body and mind are produced from three qualities. Qualities in modern science are solely in the mind, but in Sankhya they are also the body. Therefore, Sankhya, the body is just like the mind. The body's properties, such as weight, are like thought of the mind, and these thoughts are produced variously, which means the weight changes due to effect of one or more of the five types of prana. The airplane thus becomes lighter due to the same process by which mind feels light. Sometimes the mind feels light when some form of prana makes sattva prominent. Hence there is type of prana that makes the body light. The prana is the cause of sattva prominence. Thus, we don't care about whether the plane is inverted or upright. As is necessary for Bernoulli's principle, we don't care if wings are curved or flat. We don't care if the air knows the plane upright or inverted. The wings are flat or curved as necessary by Bernoulli's principle. The plane is flying because the Vienna is making sattva prominent. The flight is due to similar reasons of a body weight less in the morning and more in the night, and why spring gives a lightness and autumn gives heaviness. Thus, the science of light can be reduced to Vienna manifesting lightness by making sattva prominent. Sattva is already in the aircraft, so external addition are unnecessary. But under modern science, we don't know how to make sattva prominent. Hence, we use an engine which flows a process of prana, samana, apana, urana to generate vyana, called the aircraft running on the runway. The motion on the aircraft on the runway, otherwise called vyana, the act on the aircraft wingspan to lift the plane upwards. The Vyana in this case is not an innate property of the aircraft. It is rather generated by the process of prana, samana, apana, urana, and combustion engine. The Viana must increase to a point that it can generate enough lift, which means that the airplane must attain a certain speed before lifting off the runway. It is not necessary for a yogi to run on a runway before he flies in the air because he is using the internal Viana, not generating it through engine. Thus, a yogi can fly even without an engine. However, an aircraft needs an engine to fly in the air. The process of manifest and unmanifest. Every property that a body can ever take is always present in the body, but it can be unmanifest. Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita how childhood, youth, and old age are in the body, but manifest one by one due to time and will. Most of us don't want to get old, but we get old due to effects of time. But some yogis, such as four Kumaras, have the willpower to resist the change effects of time. They always remain 4 years old. Youth and old age are present in their body but remains unmanifest. Similarly, lightness and heaviness are equally present in our bodies, but they are manifest one after another. The process can be reconciled with the previous discussion of flipping the order of modes. When sattva is subordinate and tamas is dominant, and as a result, the body is heavy, the reversal of that dominant subordinate state is always possibility, which is yet to be realized when modes are flipped. Heaviness becomes lightness or vice versa. Thereby, we say that unmanifest has become manifest by choice. Factually, lightness and heaviness are both possible, but one of them is unmanifest. When modes are flipped, the unmanifest becomes manifest and the manifest becomes unmanifest. The relationship between manifest and unmanifest is called duality in Vedic text, which means when something is seen, something else is hidden. When heaviness is seen, then lightness is hidden, but process of revealing the hiding can become extremely complicated, such that the revelation of one property hides not just its proper opposite, but also heaviness and hides other properties. For instance, when lightness manifests, then heat, roughness, and hardness may also be hidden. Thereby, transition from heaviness to lightness can also be the change from hot to cold, rough to smooth, and hard to soft. The role of balance and rationality in change. According to the change from one property to another, one follows many paths. On some path, only heaviness is hidden and lightness is revealed, but on another path, this change can be accompanied also by hot becoming cold. On yet another path, the previous change can also be accompanied by hard becoming soft and rough becoming smooth. Path selection is therefore also a choice. By doing one kind of change, how many other changes are being carried out in parallel? That is path choice. The soul walks on this path through its choice. By that process, one initial state can be converted into many final states depending on the chosen path. There is no universal law that says that if heavy becomes light, then hot becomes cold. If heavy becomes light, then hot must not become cold. All these rules are mere concatenations created by selectively studying fewer phenomena. The general principle is that many changes can occur simultaneously depending on the path chosen by will. The general rule is only that the three modes of nature are mutually opposite. Therefore, if we try to change heaviness to lightness, the change will be temporary and body will be unstable unless we also change the body from hot to cold. Thus, when a satellite is launched using rocket, lightness is created by an engine which is also generating a lot of heat. There is an a contradiction between lightness and heat. The former is in sattva and the latter is in tamas. Therefore, a satellite launch using a rocket is an unstable and temporary process. One of the satellites reaches its orbit, the engine is shut off, and the body goes from hot to cold. As lightness has been attained, which is stable state because lightness and coolness are mutually compatible modal states, predominant in sattva. If the contradiction between lightness and heat is not resolved during satellite launch, then the launching rocket can burst into flames and fall onto Earth. All objects therefore go from state of one mode dominance to a state of multi-mode balance and again to one mode dominance. The state of one mode dominance is stable and long lived, while the state of multi mode balance is unstable and temporary. A stable state is an initial or final state, and the unstable and temporary state is path connecting the initial and final state. The stable and transitory state can be maturized into hop by hop movement. For instance, if you can stand on both legs for a while, then jump a step forward and again stand on two legs. Standing on two legs is stable and long lived, while jumping between two states is unstable and temporary. A successful jump requires a careful balance between speed, light, hand, and leg curvatures and body inclination. Acrobats know how to jump. Therefore, we cannot go from one state to another through arbitrarily chosen path. There are many paths to destination, but not all paths lead to same destination. The modal process of flying an aircraft. We can now return to the main question. Why did Vimana make the aircraft body light? The simple answer is that engine heat in tamas, the motion of the aircraft, the Vianas is rajas. The lightness of the aircraft is sattva, and a new temporary balance between sattva and rajas and tamas is created when the aircraft flies. When the aircraft is not flying, heaviness is tamas. The stationary engine in tamas and the stationary aircraft is tamas. Thereby, tamas is dominant and can stay in the state for very long. But the engines turned on the stationary state is hidden. The motion state is revealed and Vyana is created, which then acts on the body of the aircraft. That action then hides heaviness and manifests lightness to produce a temporary balance between the modes. The shape of the aircraft is an important property of the flight because of a moving car doesn't fly due to absence of wings. Everything in Bernoulli's principle comes down to simple propositions. Speed and weight are mutually contradictory. Properties due to created due to rajas and tamas. If the weight increases, speed increases. If the speed increases, weight decreases. But the reduction in weight is created for some body shapes, yet another property of the object than another. That is why cars don't fly, but the addition of wings to the car can make the car fly because the effect of speed on weight is not same on all shapes, even if they weigh the same in a stationary state. Some shapes lose weight faster with increasing speed than other shapes. Hence, shape, weight, and speed are not independent properties. They are distinct and yet inseparable, such that increasing the speed of one shape has different effects on uh, stationary weight. The fact is that weight is not independent of shape and speed. These are mutually entangled and inseparable properties, such that the changing one of those properties can change all others. The entanglement numerous properties. Under the postulate of independent properties, we need two independent laws. Newton's gravitational law and Bernoulli's principle. To explain more phenomena, the former explains the increasing speeds of heavy falling objects, while later explains the decreasing weight of fast moving object. As we add more properties, body shape, tensile strength, thermal conductivity, electrical conductivity, malleability, and ductility, every new laws have to be devised to deal with the interaction between various properties because previous theories about each of these properties assume that they are independent of each other. The fact is that they are not mutually independent. They are all mutually entangled in hierarchical tree of the three modes, such that smallest of the changes to the tree structure will generally alter many, if not all, properties at once. By studying entanglement between properties, we realize that there is no such thing of objective speed, temperature, weight. Shape, tensile strength, thermal and electrical conductivity, malleability, and ductility. The measured value of a property is transient effect of the changing measure object upon the changing measure instrument. The reality is the coevolution of the properties. That reality is the hierarchical tree structure of the three modes, not the transiently measured, quantified, and objectified properties. By understanding that tree structure, we can know that what shape and weight will heat up, how much at which height, and at which speed the student of Fluid mechanics could be asked to predict the temperature of the aircraft given some shape, speed, weight, and height. There's no equation at the present, but we need a new equation for that because theory that is still hierarchical structure of modes. In this way, we can subsume hundreds and thousands of equations into one theory. There is no gravitation force acting on a body according to mathematical equation based on some fixed masses. There's no such thing as upward motion generated by a moving body with a fixed mass. The reality is that mass itself is not conserved. What is not conserved over time cannot be a real property in science. Thus, all physical properties of modern science are fiction. The reality is that three modes of nature organized in one structures have varying three modes of nature organized. We call this detector clicks and pointer movement. Then we say, since that these things clicked or moved, therefore there must be objective properties called mass or speed. But the general principle of bhed, all reality can be summarized using word bheda, or distinct but inseparable. The shape of human feet precludes the shape of dog's face and vice versa. The human body shape is entangled with properties of other bodies such as hand, legs, ears, lungs, heart, intestines, etc. The smell, taste, and temperature of food are not independent. Some foods smell and taste better when cold, while other foods smell and taste better with hot. Food decoration sometimes enhances the flavor, and by smelling the flavor of many foods, we can sometimes tell their taste. There is non separable distinction. Modern science is based on the ideas of independent properties. In classical mechanics, these were called positions and momentum. This is called elephant and the five blind men problem in Indian philosophy. To know that something is a leg and not a cylinder, we have to know that it is an elephant. We know that the elephant, after knowing the trunk, stomach, tail, and stomach, thus a knowledge of the other parts changed the knowledge of each part. Modern science did not want to deal with the problem, so it postulated the reality is many independent properties or that you can correctly know the leg without the elephant. Changes to science change technology. The metaphysics of reduction of separation and independence underlying physics is false. It forces us to say that if an airplane flies, it must not reduce, but an additional force that counterbalances the force of gravity is created. If we do not have the metaphysics of independence, then we could not say the mass is not an objective, independent, and constant. That changes with other properties, and it can be changed to make something fly. Which property should be tweaked to change the weight with now primary topic of interest and will naturally lead to new science. In this new science, we would not try to counterbalance the force of gravity, but change other things which may totally counterintuitive to most people, and yet those changes can drastically reduce the weight. This type of technology is already seen in UFOs.
Discover the Vimana, described as a flying chariot with divine power. Unravel the mysteries of the Pushpaka Vimana, a flying vehicle mentioned in the Indian epic Ramayana. Explore the secrets of the Entra, an ancient machine designed for aerial navigation. Intriguing, isn't it? The ancient Indian civilization holds many more secrets waiting to be discovered. Step into the mysterious world of ancient India, where
machines known as Vimanas. Vimana, according to ancient Indian texts, refers to flying machines or chariots of the gods. These weren't just mythical wagons on clouds, mind you. Descriptions of Vimana are incredibly detailed and far more advanced than the usual mythological imagery. In fact, these texts don't only describe how the Vimana looked, they discuss propulsion, design, and even as depicted in texts like the Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Vaimanika Sastra are often said to be equipped with powerful weapons, ones that could supposedly level entire cities. Dive into the core of Hindu mythology. In these texts, Vimana were described as the celestial chariots of the gods. In the Mahabharata, a great ancient Indian epic, the sky was alive with battles fought between gods in these airborne chariots. Indra, the god of thunder and rain, was said to have used a Vimana to traverse the heavens, wielding weapons that could decimate mountains, and Vishnu and Shiva were described with similar flying machines, each equipped with what sounds like destructive power beyond any earthly.
Is Vimana just a way of illustrating divine power, or did the people of ancient India actually believe that these machines existed?
We will be delving into the fascinating topic of Vimanas, the ancient flying machines mentioned in Indian mythology. Vimanas have been a subject of great curiosity and debate among scholars and enthusiasts alike. So, let's put on our thinking caps and explore this intriguing topic together. The concept of Vimanas can be traced back to ancient Hindu texts, such as the Rig Veda, which dates back to more than 3,500 years ago. These texts describe Vimanas as flying machines that were built by highly advanced civilizations. The Ramayana and Mahabharata, two epic poems from ancient India, also mention Vimanas. According to the texts, Vimanas were powered by an energy source, such as Mercury or the Sun, and could be controlled using a system of levers and switches. They were capable of traveling between different worlds and even to the heavens. The descriptions of Vimanas in ancient texts vary, with some sources depicting them as circular or saucer-shaped, while others describe them as bird-like or even as elephants with wings. However, all descriptions agree that Vimanas were highly advanced and capable of feats that were considered impossible at the time. They could travel vast distances in a short amount of time, perform incredible aerial maneuvers, and even become invisible at will. The Vimanas were also equipped with powerful weapons that could destroy entire armies and cities. Despite the vivid descriptions of Vimanas in ancient texts, there is no physical evidence to support their existence. No ancient artifacts or ruins have been discovered that resemble the flying machines described in the texts. Additionally, the technology required to build such advanced machines would have been beyond the capabilities of ancient civilizations. Some scholars argue that the Vimanas were simply metaphorical or allegorical representations of spiritual or philosophical concepts. Others believe that the Vimanas were real and that their technology was lost over time. The Vimanas remain an enigma to this day, and their existence continues to be a topic of debate among scholars and enthusiasts alike. However, regardless of whether they were real or simply a product of the imagination, the Vimanas serve as a testament to the advanced knowledge.
We don't see any engines in UFOs. We don't see exhaust fumes coming out of them. They don't have any wings, but they fly much faster. How? The answer is that they're changing other properties rather than trying to counterbalance gravity. The mass of the speed of UFO is automatically decreased or increased by changing some other property. There can be million kinds of UFOs that change their mass and speed by tweaking other properties. Once we understand Bheda Bheda, then we know that we can make minor changes to one property to create big changes in other properties. This is called mind controlling the body. But since people think that the mind is mysterious non-material substance, they don't get it. The fundamental principle of nature is that reality is structured in as an inverted tree, and a minor change in the root can cause drastic change in the trunk, twigs, and leaves. This is because leaves, twigs, trunks, and roots are distinct, but the inseparable. All this philosophy and science can be discovered even through the study of aerodynamics. There are profound problems in each subject can reveal the same principles if we are serious about it. Hope this topic has got some insight on our ancient Vimanas like Pushpak Viman and the Viman used in Sitaharan as mentioned in the Ramayana. Basically, it as said that they were actually trying to changed some properties in the sattva, and that's how they flew, rather than the using the big engines and fuels that we use in modern technology today. So thanks for joining the Admin Show. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye.